Hello. I think we're live now. Welcome, everybody. My name is John, and I'm the CEO and founder of ScatterSpoke. And today we're going to have a quick chat about how data is not going to solve all your problems. So I guess we can kind of get going in here. So quickly about me. My name is John, like I said. I live in Denver, Colorado. I have 3 kids and I'm married. I've been in software engineering for quite a long time. I've done individual contributor stuff. I've been an architect. I've ran engineering departments. I went to the dark side in 2018, and that's kind of what led me to starting ScatterSpoke. I think there's a lot of talent in the software engineering world, but I think there could be a little bit better process for improvement. And we've been on a journey around improvement ever since. A little bit about ScatterSpoke. So we officially launched it in 2019 as just a retrospective tool. That was kind of our V1. V2, we added in a bunch of machine learning and smarts. To kind of make use of all that data about your improvement. And now this next version we are launching has to do with tying data into goals and making it useful at the team level. So I'm assuming this audience is at least technologically savvy in some way. I have some kind of jokes that probably appeal to developers more than others, so bear with me if you don't think they're funny. But I want to start off by kind of giving an analogy to make this set in a little bit. So, if you're a new web developer or any kind of developer, a lot of times, you're sitting there writing your code and you're wondering why it's not working. So, an inexperienced developer often will start adding console logs everywhere, print statements, just to try to get more data about where things are breaking, right? So if you have a method called foo and it does 5 things inside, I might add a log statement after every line, like look up the database user, log that out, create the database user, log the result out, hoping that it's going to give me the information and context of where the code's actually breaking down. And really all you're doing here is you're collecting more data. The tricky part about it is that you're not, like, while that is a way to get better, it's lacking a lot of context, and we'll talk about that next. So one of the things we've noticed while building and running ScatterSpoke and analyzing retrospective data from lots and lots of teams is that data is everywhere. We live in this data driven world now where it's like you're the cool kid if you're data driven. That's all fine and dandy, and it's actually gotten really easy to get engineering data specifically. So the way we see this happen a lot is like, okay, I'm a leader of an engineering organization. I go buy some tool or I make it someone's job to go pull metrics out of Jira and GitHub and what have you. And hopefully we build some pretty dashboards. And then I say, hey, 50 engineers, here's all the data about how we're doing. And you're like, cool, I guess. It is helpful. You can see some things. You might be able to see where some common bottlenecks are, but you have no attachment to it. And so one of the things that we like to tell companies is, like, you got to get out of this mindset where leadership should be owning the data and bring that data ownership down to the teams. So the team should be encouraged to get their own data, see what they want to collect, and that's going to give them ownership over making use out of it. If you have 50 people in an engineering organization and only 1 or 2 or the managers see the data, like, what do you think the likelihood that you're going to do anything with it is? It's very low. It's just out of sight, out of mind, and that's really what the problem is. Um, and so, furthermore, after you get all this data, one thing that we see a lot is, again, the same leadership. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to make use of this data so that we become data driven as a company or as a engineering group. So they'll set goals for everybody, and they might set a goal of like, okay, the Dora metrics are now super important to us. So that means we need to deploy all the time, and we need to get our bug rates down and stuff like that. The problem with this top-down approach is a few things. One is that when a leader that's not close to the work is setting goals for everybody, it lacks the unique attributes of teams. So an example would be you have a web developer team, you have an iOS team, you have a hardware team. To say that everybody's going to do 4 deployments a month is just crazy. Like iOS and hardware will never be able to do that. While a web team might be able to deploy 4 times a day. The other problem that we see with this is, you might make a metric around velocity or cycle time. And it's the same thing. Like if you're looking at this data in a black box, um, you're not considering humans, right? And that means teams are getting measured on their performance by how many check-ins they're doing or how many pull requests. Like they're useful. It's useful data, but it's not the whole picture. And then lastly, just to kind of reiterate, what we see a lot is the data often just never gets used. So you install some data collection about all your processes, and you look at it for the first month and you're like, oh, let's do that, do this. And then, the quarter goes by and then you're like, oh yeah, we have all this data. Let's review it together. That's way too much time to make use out of data. You might be able to see high trends, but if you're doing 2-week sprints, where the whole point is that you can course correct, what you're building, it's like, it just doesn't match up. Like, so we need a better process than this. The other thing, bringing this back to the team levels now, I made the comment around how leadership often is, they're up a couple levels. They might have an idea of where the bottlenecks are, what's happening, which teams are happy or not happy, but they're not doing the work every day. And it makes more sense. Like if you go to any engineering team and you say, like, what are the top 3 things we could do to make your life better? And they would quickly rattle off, if only our CI pipeline worked consistently, if only Ted would tell me when his pull requests are approved. It's stuff like this. Like people that are doing the work, they already know where the problems are. And so what we're encouraging people to do is to take the goals down to the team level. So instead of a company or an org saying, we're going to do 10 deployments per month for everybody, you're going to say, team 1, how many deployments is good for you guys? If they're an iOS team, that might be 1 a month. If they're a web team, that might be 20 a month. But that allows them to decide, first of all, what's the most important thing to fix? And the second thing is, what does good mean? And that's pretty important, I think, because you just don't know. You also can't compare teams that have 2 people versus 5 people. Like there's just so much context in engineering that you need to let them decide what good is. And I'm not saying leadership shouldn't challenge them on what good is, but it should start there. And then the last thing is, once you have this goal, you're going to take all this data that we can collect anyways and marry the 2 together. So now you have goals that were set by the teams and you have the data to back it up. And you have a target measure that you're striving for. So that we've succeeded, we've progressed, we've made it to 10 deployments a month. or our PR cycle time is 1 day now. The next thing is kind of addressing what are we doing with all this data. It's super important to be talking about this. So if you say you want to get your PR cycle time down because that's the thing that's going to make you to complete all your story points for the sprint, if you're not talking about it regularly, you're just going to go back to your bad habits. So in some kind of format, you need to set a recurring calendar reminder or something where the team, and this is important, that it's the team level, the people that said it was important are going over what is working, what's not working, and ideally generating actions to fix it. Now, I think that's the part that a lot of companies get hung up on. If you're not in control of your backlog as a team at all, and all the company wants is features, 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 that action part can be hard to make the argument to add to your sprint if it's like a bigger task that you need to complete. I like to advise companies to just sneak this in with feature work unless it's something so big. But oftentimes you can, like, if you're making a new feature to make the button yellow, well, what does that actually involve? Well, that button being yellow still has to go through the CI pipelines. Okay, well, it's going through the CI pipelines. I can spend 3 hours trying to make them more reliable. Like, it's related. You can always find ways to relate it to the feature work. And this kind of gets back into kind of our shameless plug for all of this. And while it is a little bit of a shameless plug because we are a retro tool, but you should be setting these goals. You should be reviewing them consistently. In what better place than at the start of your retro? So, oftentimes this is called the facts and stats phase, right? You get to, before the retro actually starts, you're remembering the events that happened over the last 2 weeks. John was out sick, company layoffs. Oh, we only did 2 deployments. Our goal was 10. Our PR cycle time actually went up over the last 2 weeks. And what this does for your retro conversation is that it'll give you some intention. I think a lot of retros is just a place to get on together and start complaining to one another about general things going wrong. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a healthy space for that. But also, if you start by talking about all these goals and what's not working, the whole retro conversation can turn into how can we get better at these things? And since the team is talking about it and coming up with it together, the actions that you choose to take to make them better or worse, or just better, I guess, everybody is connected to it. So it's not reliant on some high up person to magically fix your problems. It's on you. And that brings a lot of accountability down to the teams. Now, just to kind of circle back to the beginning of this chat here, giving back to my same example, like how a more experienced web developer would solve a problem. So they have a bug or my code's not working. Instead of adding print statements everywhere, it's easy. You just hook up a debugger to it, which what does that do? It gives you the application context. You can inspect everything around the broken calls in your code and see exactly what the program's doing. That's much more informative than just randomly printing out log statements everywhere. And if you do that, you're going to find your solution and be hopefully as happy as this guy here about it. Lastly here, we at ScatterSpoke believe very strongly in this, and we've been working with a lot of big clients of ours, and that's how we kind of led down this path. But everything that I just talked about in this talk, you're going to be able to do that in ScatterSpoke. So our first pass at this is you're going to be able to work on Dora metrics, different agile metrics, and there's a new kind of dev productivity framework called the Space Framework, which I recommend everybody check out. It's super cool. It's way more encompassing than just Dora. It focuses on teams and people as well. But essentially, we'll have these library of goals. You can choose, like in this screenshot I have, the deployment frequency, and we'll track this over time. So this is the facts and stats stage right before your retro would start. So you can start by reviewing your progress on these things, take the where you're at into the retro. You can come up with the actions, and you can tie those actions back to these goals. And what that was going to allow you to do is to basically make a record of the things that actually had material impact on these goals that your team's setting up. So if you're interested in learning more about how to do that in ScatterSpoke, you can go to our website and create a free account. You can email us. We are this is kind of in beta, and so if you do make an account, you can write us and just mention this talk, and we're happy to give this away to much more than 15 people, so you can try this across a bunch of teams as kind of a pilot. And we're super excited, and we think this is going to have some really material impact on team improvement. And that's it. Do we have any comments? I don't think so. All righty.